And we're back, Stripe Show podcast. Hope you're having a great week. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. And, well, this is how we do it on the podcast. We take you right to the action this week. PGA Tour up in Ohio. A gentleman by the name of Jack Nicklaus has a tournament. It's called the Memorial Muirfield Village. Beautiful spot, guy, that is on property and has, let's just say, has had a very busy week and will continue because he's got Lanto Griffin, Will Zalatoris, Sam Ryder, Adam Long, Taylor Moore, and Patrick Reed in the field. And he joins us, top short game coach Josh Gregory. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Just hanging out in the wonderful parking lot here. So I wish I would could do it on property, but don't want to get either one of us in trouble. But
No.
yeah, I'm doing awesome. Looking forward. It's one of my favorite spots ever. I actually played my first ever college golf tournament here when I played at SMU under Hank Haney. Was here at Muirfield Village, so it's a special place.
Jesus, what was Hank like as a coach? Did he
It was
get all
tough.
pissed off when you didn't do your job?
You know what? I'll say this: I've grown to appreciate, and we still talk a decent amount these days. And I've grown to appreciate him a lot more now than I did then, because as a 18 to 22-year-old kid, golf was our life, and that was pretty much all we did. But his work ethic and his instilling of discipline was pretty incredible, and I didn't appreciate it at the time because we wanted to have a little fun, and he was tough, but you know what? He was fair. And,
yeah.
But yeah, it was. I learned a ton from him.
Yeah, I used to do Hank's radio show every Tuesday, and I would dial in and we would talk, and sometimes I'd get a text from him afterwards, and he's blowing me up like this and that. I'm like, God, Hank, I'm your guest on the show. Yeah, but you're not saying this, or you gotta say something. Okay, well,
he's a perfectionist. There's nobody that works harder. I give him a tons of credit for those times. He was running a full-time business and teaching tour players and still coaching us, and was there at pretty much every practice. So it was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this week. Muirfield Village. So this is a cool place. This is always a great field. No one's going to miss this one. A lot of reasons why, of course, Jack Nicklaus, one of the greats of all time. You can another time between him and Tiger as far as who's the best of all time. But Jack puts on a great show there. It's a great golf course, Muirfield Village. He's made some changes over the years. You've been there. You've seen it over the years. Just give some insight to my listeners as a short game coach, because we know strokes gained tee to green is super important at this place. 100%. You've got to have a short game. You can't fake it around here. Give us a little insight to perhaps something we need to know here. Short game around these greens, a shot or two that the players have to have this week.
Well, I think for one, to kind of summarize what I do, I'm trying to build these guys a defense mechanism, because we know that strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained approach are by far the most important stats in determining who wins. And then usually of those guys in the top 10, whoever putts the best wins. That's facts. So, my job is hopefully that they never have to use a lot of what we're working on, that I can get them to have a sound enough short game, sound enough putting that therefore it frees up their ball striking, because we know that's what win golf tournaments. So having said that, this week at Muirfield Village, you have to drive it well. It starts there. The fairways are generous, but missing the rough is probably perhaps one of the top 3 or 4 most penal places, missing the rough, because you really can't hit the greens. And it's hard to really try to get it to the right spot. There's not a lot of pitching this week from the fairway. If you miss it short, there's some pitching, but for the most part, you're going to be chipping it out of the thick rough and bunkers with extremely high lips, very Nicklaus oriented. So, if you look at stats historically, the guys who hit it, distance isn't that big of a deal here. Although it's a long golf course, it's become a little bit more relevant. Accuracy off the tee, and then definitely strokes gained approach into the greens, because it's such a fine line here between being perfect and being absolutely screwed in a bad spot. There's so much slopes. It's a typical Nicklaus second shot golf course. You've got to hit it high. You've got to be in the right quadrant. Otherwise, you can have some really tough two putts and up and downs. But as far as what I'm telling my guys around the greens to work on, there's several things. For one, these are probably the deepest bunkers on tour. Gosh, I remember when I first played here in college, in my first ever college tournament, I'd never hit out of a bunker that really had a lip, and so, and I think I probably had a 56-degree wedge, so I didn't know what I was doing. I could barely get them out of the bunker. So you've got to have serious height. The greens will bake out, so it's not a place you're going to get a ton of spin on shots around the green. So we have to do it with height. You're also out of the rough. You're going to get so many shots out of the rough because if you're coming in from the rough, or even coming in from the fairway, but especially from the rough, it's going to one bounce and just barely go over the green. So you're going to have a lot of balls because they're banked from, over the back. They're from back to front. So you might only be, you can have a ton of shots from 3 and 4 feet off the green that are going to be on thick rough that you literally only need to move it 3 or 4 feet to get it on the green. So there's a lot of, short-sided little dump shots, a lot of bunker shots that needs, supreme height. The rough is thick, but it doesn't really go to the bottom. And that's something, from a technical standpoint that we can talk about a little bit. I mean, there's, very rarely in this grass does the ball go all the way to the bottom like it can in Bermuda grass. It always sits up with a little bit of cushion under it. So there's a little different technique in how to play those shots. And so just trying to get the guy, what I do every week. With all my guys, about half the guys I'm full swing everything with, and then all my guys I'm short game putting and practice with, and is mainly, show up on property and figure out what kind of grass we're dealing with, as far as the chipping areas, figure out style of bunkers, soft, firm. If you look at Southern Hills a couple of weeks ago, had pebbles in them, so having to figure out how to try to play that, and then what kind of rough are we dealing with. So therefore, in preparation, we're hitting those shots and understanding, some form of setup technique, what we're trying to do out of that. It's kind of like a couple of weeks ago at Southern Hills. I heard a lot of guys complaining about the bunkers, but I mean, this is going to sound blatantly, very almost borderline rude. Is that, well, you knew the bunkers were going to be that way starting on Monday. I don't know why nobody was preparing for it.
Right.
I mean, you wasn't like you were going to show up on Thursday and you thought they were just going to be perfect sand bunkers. So you knew, so you had to figure out a way to create height there. You weren't going to spin it because of those pebbles.
Right.
So anyway,
that's
a lot of what I do.
So let's because we're going to get to Will here in a minute, Zalatoris, who, look, he's a talented young man, fascinating player. I was so impressed with him at the PGA, just a couple weeks ago. So we're going to get to some of his stuff here in a minute. You shared some video with me. We're going to pull it up and look at it from a putting and some short game stuff. But before we get to that, you mentioned the short game and the ball kind of doesn't sit towards the bottom. Isn't that nice? Because here in Florida, I can tell you here at Northeast Florida, TPC, the ball sits at the bottom.
Correct.
And it's a different type of shot. So take our audience through it. Okay, the ball's kind of got a little cush to it. It's in the rough versus it's at the bottom. So what would be some of the differences there between the two?
Well, so short game is, everybody asks, what do you teach? And what do you teach in short game? What is your method? And I don't really have one. I mean, it's everything I try to teach in chipping is lie based chipping. There's not one single method for any shot. Yes, for basic shots out of the fairway, there's kind of two ways. There's a little draw look to it. Patrick Reed, who's very draw oriented with his chipping. Or you've got kind of Will Zalatoris or even Jason Day, who would be slightly more on the wide-to-wide cut version of it. But if you look at the lies around the green, so everything is kind of related to angle of attack. So, and that's about it. That's about as fancy of a term as I'm going to use. But the further the ball sits down in the rough and it's closest to the surface, your weight goes way more to the left, almost feeling like you're 80-20. On the left side, the ball goes further back in your stance, and the club is working way more on a V type shape. It's working way steeper, way more up and down, so you can get on the ball first. Also, when the ball is sitting down, contrary to what a lot of people think, you don't need as much speed because you're getting to the golf ball first. So therefore, you're getting a little bit cleaner. So ball down, whether it's especially in Bermuda, but also in bent, the weight goes super left, ball goes back, and it's a very steep angle of attack. As the ball works up, more toward that lie that we get most of the time, which is kind of half up, half down, that's when it's going to move a little bit more to the center of the stance. It's going to get a little bit more I call hitting up on it. Sweep feeling, a little bit more draw, releasing the right hand, because if we get too steep when it's sitting halfway up, you hit it on top of the face and it goes nowhere. It just kind of comes off dead. And then the one that I think probably tricks people the most is the one that actually sits up really high. So when it sits up really high on the grass, whether bent, Bermuda, rye, bluegrass, whatever it is, I actually want that ball played almost ahead of your left foot, almost really far forward, and you're literally hitting up on it, trying to throw the club head up over your left shoulder, so you're hitting it on the up. So, because that's the only way to truly hit it in the center of the face. And I just think the majority of mistakes of amateurs or even tour players, candidly, just not understanding how to read lies and understanding that ball position, weight distribution, and angle of attack is really what sets it up. So it kind of goes from more weight left to ball back to when it's really down to weight almost on your right side when the ball's sitting up.
All right, well, let's get into a shot here, because that's good stuff. I mean, that very well articulated on 3 different types of lies and what has to change: ball position, angle of attack, etc. Now, you sent a video with me. All right, I'm gonna pop it up here. This is Will, one of your students, and I love this technique so much around the greens here. Pretty decent lie, and I did a little program here, one of my newest ones, video series, 150 yards on in, and this was a shot that made up one of the videos, and I spent a lot of time on it, and I called it like a woodened out shot, where your arms and hands felt pretty woodened out, not stiff, but straight passive, where you felt like you just had to kind of turn, and your arms and hands did anything. And you sent this to me, and I was like, this is great stuff. Take my audience through what Will's doing here on this type of shot.
So if we look at this, this would be more my Jason Day model. I think Jason Day is probably the best basic chipper in the world. Basic chippers, pretty much, if you look at his setup, we're always trying to get his sternum. If we draw a straight line down the center of his hat, down his chest, it should go to the golf ball. If you notice that, his buttons stay on the ball or ahead of the ball the whole time. So all we're trying to do is to get a very centered kind of left position with very kind of stiff-wristed, wide in the backswing. So if you look at it when it's parallel to the ground, that club, look how far his hands are away from the ground at that moment. Club's pretty much parallel to the ground. There's very little hinge, and from there, he's just hitting it with his center, with his core, with his chest. So our goal is that it's way more of on a U kind of arc, not a very V arc, which would be straight up, a V shape, which is straight up and down, which would require more for more height. So this is just trying to control his low point by using his center, using his core, using his pivot. You know, I've said this numerous times. In chipping this way, your hands are just along for the ride. You're hitting it with your core, you're hitting it with your chest, and the hands. Yes, we know you hit the golf ball with the hands. I've had people comment that to me numerous times. Well, you're hitting it with your hands. Well, no shit. Excuse my language, but I mean, I know you're hitting it with your hands. But the feel is that the body is controlling the pivot and that the hands are just along for the ride and the ball just gets in the way. And if you notice this, we're taking very, very little divots. If anything, I want it to be picked. Will, when he first came to me, was amazing at the hard shots, extremely good at the flop shot, but was pretty poor basic stuff. So we just cleaned this up to get it. He had a lot of shaft lean, a lot of wrist cock in the backswing, a lot of stab, a lot of divot. So he was great at spinning it in hard shots, but not very good at the basic.
Okay, now I'm going to pull up another one. Here's another one you sent me. So this one, in your text, you said this is a cut release.
Correct.
Okay, so let's play this. Walk my audience. What's different here?
So in everything Will does, he tries to keep the club outside his hands at all times in his full swing and his chipping or whatever. But if you notice, this would be more of a technique that I would want to see guys use off very tight lies. So when the lie is very, very tight, now different from soft, you know when you can get the tight but yet soft underneath. This would be very firm, something you would get maybe in Phoenix or Vegas or somewhere where when it's firm, we want the weight more left. We want the path to be a little bit more out to in on the cut side. So you can see his club stays outside his hand. And if you look post impact, his hands kind of disappear into his stomach. If you notice post impact, the hands work a little bit more left. club exits a little bit more left. The face is more open in relation to the arc, and it's going to have just a little cut spin to it. But what that does is that moves his low point just a little bit more forward because the lie is so tight. We've got to get on the ball first.
So you said tight lie with a kind of a softer base. This is good for?
This would be tight and firm. So
tight and firm. Yeah. Okay.
The change I would make for like when we get that tight grass on top, especially in the winter when it's tight but yet soft underneath, when it's kind of muddy, is when I would use a very similar technique here, but I would chip it way more off the toe. I would stand a little closer to it, chip it off the toe, because the toe, the heel's the sharpest part of the club, and if the heel enters the ground off soft turf, you're kind of done.
And you can see the face rotating there to my audience when it's a topic that we've dissected before, like with some of the changes of Victor Hovland, some of the things that you see with the face rotating back, like right here, the toes rotating a little bit more up, as you would see perhaps in a full swing, but you can see that club passing. All good pitchers of the ball too. Like when they swing through, Josh, like they do this naturally where it's like when obviously they're rotating their chest through, but it's almost like they almost kind of work up with, watch the head kind of works up with it.
Yes.
They're not staying down.
No, that's the worst help anybody can ever give is the head stays down, because if the head stays down, the shoulder and the chest can't open up, and that's going to keep your low point way too far back. So there's a marriage between dumping the face out, letting the club head pass by, also by still pivoting your chest and rotating. So it's a mini golf swing, but this is he's pretty darn good at it. But I would definitely say this is he's kind of a cutter in everything he likes to do around the greens. I mean, this is pretty darn neutral. He's got the ability to draw it around the greens, but this is definitely the feel of more of a cut look to it.
When would you draw it around the greens?
Patrick Reed draws everything.
Okay.
So he's a draw chipper. He's an aim right. I think I sent you a video of myself actually where the club's working way more around. The toe is way more open on the backswing with a little bit of release. Draw chipping works great when the grass is really lush, when it's softer. But so it's definitely more of a rounded sitting up. Also, it's kind of similar to like when the ball's in the first cut of rough and it sits up a little bit. Yep. When you get too steep, again, too steep, ball hits on top of the face and it has a really hard trouble spinning it. So I'm probably slightly more on the bias of draw chipping per se, which is essentially, to me, it's just on plane. But right. The face is working square to the arc the whole time. There's actually a little bit of opening and closing of the face in a more kind of a draw chipping, but I think, again, there's so many different ways of doing this. I mean, if you look at it, and I've said this numerous times, there are not many great ball strikers that are great chippers, and vice versa, right? Because it's an opposite move. I've helped Victor Hovland several times in the past, and he came to me, and he's got an extremely shut face. The club is extremely outside on the backswing, but he has a lot of shaft lean. But that's what makes him one of the best ball strikers in the world. So being a great ball striker and a great chipper are honestly two different motions. Most great chippers have a cup left wrist. The face rotates open. They hinge, they unhinge, and that's just their feel. The toe kind of beats the heel. Does that make sense? The toe passes the heel through impact. Yep. We're in great ball strikers. The face is shut. They're shaft lean. The toe never passes the heel.
You know who was not a great chipper of the ball and basically just described to a T was Jack Nicklaus.
Yes. Yeah. He was out of bunkers and out of pitching, because you have to have more. He was way more up and down, shut, kind of a strong face.
And shut. Stronger face, yeah.
But you know what? But look at Jordan Spieth. I mean, Jordan Spieth maybe top 3 chipper in the world, if not one. But he's a lot of shaft lean, takes a lot of divot, super leany. But I would never teach that, but it works. Obviously, It works amazing for him. So
and Mickelson,
my goal
is
to try to get guys to take as little divot as possible. I think being shallow, almost hitting it off the bottom groove, between groove 1 and 2, slightly on the thin side, creates the low launch, high spin. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. I don't care about hard up and downs. most everything I do with my guys is working on basic up and downs, the momentum keepers. I don't care if you can get the hard ones up and down. That doesn't really matter to me. If you hit it in that bad a spot, that's you and your caddy's fault. So let's get you to get the basic ones up and down, because that's what saves your score.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That comment right there. It makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this before we put up Will's putting, because I want to spend a little time on that. You work with Patrick Reed as well, and
Yes.
and you have for a long time. And
right.
I still don't think Patrick gets like the credit he deserves and how good of a short game player he is. I mean, the dude is ridiculous, right, around the green. So let me phrase it this way. I know that he went through a period where he was trying to shut the face more coming down with Ledbetter.
Correct. Right.
And to get the face more shut and prepared. I asked David, I said, is he trying to flex the lead wrist more? And he says, no, he's just trying to shut it more and then turn and hit it. And we know the benefits of that from a ball striking standpoint. He can just turn and hit it and not worry about the face. Was there a period where, or are you still in it where, because it seems like Patrick's starting to kind of get his groove on here a little bit the last couple of
months. He's trending in the right direction. Back
trending in the right direction. Yep. Played very well last week. And was there a period where, like, when he was trying to shut the face more coming down, that would leak into some of the short game stuff that he was doing, or no?
No, brilliant comment, because that's in question, because that's exactly, you're spot on in what happened. I mean, taking that back to a little bit of Victor Hovland, for example, when he came to me and asked some questions about chipping, and I saw his club face, I said, look, this guy hits 13 greens around. So of those, he's going to miss 5 greens. He's probably going to putt 1 or 2 of those. One of them's going to be a bunker. One of them's going to be in the rough. At most, he's going to have 2 chip shots a day. So am I going to try to correct his club face for something that could take away from him being perhaps the best ball striker in the world, or one of the top 3 or 4 ball strikers? So that was a very kind of tough thing. I didn't want to play around with his club face. I wanted to try to do it with his pivot to create height and spin that way, but not mess with his club face. Had I had it to do all over again, I probably would have set his club face more open at address, and then just let him shut a little bit on the backswing instead of starting with it square and then working more shut. But having said that, I didn't want to do anything that took away from what makes him great. To look at Patrick Reed, that was kind of the conversation we had after Riviera this year. I saw him, did some video of his chipping, and the face was getting shut. The face was getting inside of his hands, which I've never seen. He was having, therefore, when your club is de-lofted and shut like that, you have to back up out of it. Your left shoulder gets too high through impact. Therefore, you can't control your low point. You're bottoming out too early. So it was probably the first time, and gosh, I coached him in college, and then ever since he's turned pro with the short game, that we actually had to have a lesson, a golf lesson. For the most time, it was simply just maintenance, working on shots, working on how to practice it. Let's hit our high, our mediums, our lows. Let's make sure ball position's good. Just simple little feels, fixes every now and then. But this was an actual chipping lesson that I haven't had to give him in a long time, because it had crept into his full swing. And kind of as I told him, look, this might be making your full swing a prettier picture, or look more like what a model looks like. But unfortunately, it's hurting your wedge play. It's hurting your chipping. It's hurting your bunker play. It's hurting your shots out of the rough, especially where you're probably the best in the world. If we had to sum up all those categories, he would be the best in the world in that area. So it was taken away from his DNA and who he is. So it was. We're back on track.
Yeah. Is he still trying to do that in his full swing?
A more minor version of it. He's back with Kevin Kirk, who's always been his, kind of, Kevin and I have kind of always shared duties. And so look, I've always thought, he's had a kind of a cup left wrist, and the club faces get open. He stalls out his lower body and has a lot of throw flip through the ball, which thankfully he's got some of the best hands in the world, which makes him a great chipper. I've always thought the club face needed to be in a little moderation at the top, slightly stronger, but not to the extreme that it was getting, because unfortunately his body doesn't know how to react from a strong club face. His left hip doesn't know how to open up. So
it's interesting. I talk about this all the time on the podcast, with it's the difference between working with like a 10 handicap and a world-class player is like, a 10, 15 handicap, the face is open, they're coming over, they're dumping it. All right, let's shut that. I tell people, look, generally speaking, amateur golfers, let's get the face a little stronger so you can learn shaft lean, you can learn how to hit it inside, you can learn how to rotate. Like all those things breed good development. But when you change the face of a world-class player,
I mean, slippery slope. I mean, I tell my guys all the time. I mean, I've had one of my guys, Taylor Moore, recently was trying to make some changes to get better, and I never blame a guy for wanting to get better. But
yeah.
I call it, Paul Easer use that word alongside talking about your DNA. You got your name on the bag, and you got out here for a reason. These guys don't need rebuilds; they need fine tuning.
Yeah.
And let's try to make what you do a little bit better. But very rarely, I mean, Faldo, Tiger, Hogan, very few guys have gone complete rebuilds and had success, and those were freaks of nature as far as work ethic and hitting golf balls.
All right, let's go back to your man, Will. You know what's funny about Will Zalatoris? When I think he finished 6th at the U.S. Open back in 2020, and I was working on getting him on the podcast. So he came on the next day after what was it, up in Wingfoot? Yeah, up in Wingfoot.
Is it at Wingfoot?
Yeah. So he gets on.
But,
right, and he plays great and finishes 6th, and he comes on my podcast on Monday, and we're talking, and he gets into Corrales. He gets into Corrales the next week. And I said, hey, Will, I said, you're in Corrales. I said, I think you're going to be the favorite. He says, oh, no, I'm not going to be the favorite. I said, no, I think you're going to be the favorite in Corrales, Will. and sure enough, he was. He finishes 8th, and off he goes. And we had a great conversation, and obviously a huge fan of Will Zalatoris. I watched him at the PGA. And the dude's cruising around. He looks like his maturity level looks like he's 35 years old. He looks like he's been there and done that. I mean, you're just so impressed with this guy. I felt like at the PGA, positive 4.6 putting. That's the best I've ever seen him putt. Am I wrong?
He's had a couple better than that. What's crazy about him is in his 5 top 10s in majors, he's been in the top 10 strokes gained putting. He's second, third at Augusta, 5th that year at the U.S. Open, 5th last year at the PGA, and then 10th this year. So in the most high-pressure moments, he's pretty darn good.
He is. What are we looking at here with this setup? Because obviously when people look at this, they see the shaft running up the lead arm, very weak left hand, and then a right hand that's almost kind of a pencil kind of looking. So kind of walk us through how you guys have come to this setup here.
So we started working about three and a half years ago, and he was at pretty rock bottom with his putting. He's been an elite ball striker pretty much his whole career. So he came to me for some technical help, practice help, just how do I get better? And I'll give this young man, the most. He and Patrick Reed are by far, if you tell them to do something and they believe in it, that they will do it no matter what. And he sticks to the same plan, same drills, same games, same routine, same feels every single day, regardless of whether he's +5 in putting or whether he's -5 in putting. And that's what's really cool about him. But if you look at it from a technical standpoint, we tried to build a setup to where it's essentially taking the right hand out of it for the most part. So I want him feeling almost 60-40, maybe even 70-30 on his left foot. His chest, again, over the center of the ball. So this was right before the PGA. So he had gotten into it, although he had putted really well. He putted during the match play, Augusta, the team deal at Zurich. He was top 10 in putting all those 3 weeks. If they don't keep stats at Augusta, they don't keep stats at the team deal. But if you look at what he did, he was well into I think he was +7 for all his matches, and then he was +4 or 5 in New Orleans. So stats are deceiving. I mean, it's going to say he's 160th, 170th in putting, wherever he is, somewhere in there. But if they added those events, he's a top 100 putter. Is he where we want to be? No, nowhere near where we want to be. But he's not that bad. He's not that bad. So if you look at it, so what happens? His common mistake is he creeps in, he gets his right shoulder too low, so he has too much tilt at address, which that causes his eye line, to be looking too far out to the right. So when his eye line is looking too far out to the right, and we've all seen it on camera, we've all seen the strokes inside of 4 feet, the putter whips straight inside, and then it has a little bit of a reroute, and sometimes he just doesn't have time to correct it from 4 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, his stroke is beautiful outside of 5 feet. He just has, he's got obviously a technical issue with obviously a little bit of anxiety that just, hey, it's who he is, and he knows it, he owns it. But look at this stroke here. You never see it on the putting green. On the putting green, the stroke is beautiful. We train every single day. If you look at the down the line view, we're constantly trying to set up barriers on the inside to where we train, trying to take the putter almost a couple inches outside to offset the pattern of taking it inside.
Does it feel more up to him?
Yes, it feels up and out.
Up and out.
That's what we do by getting the pressure more left and getting his tilt more left. That gets the putter coming up on the backswing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So if I get super left, that gets the club more vertical and outside. If I'm tilted to the right, it's going to be very low and inside. So we're constantly trying to offset that pattern. The way I explain it to him is he's made 1 million strokes in his life, ripping it inside and having to reroute it. We're just in a game of catch up, and we're going to catch up one day. And he's, it's pretty cool. I'll give you one really neat story at Sawgrass. He was in sixth going to the last round, and I think he was just under -5 strokes gained putting the last day at TPC. It was pretty poor, self-admittedly, and he walked off the green. He goes, "What'd you see?" I said, "What do you want to know, the good news, or do you want to know the bad news?" He goes, "Well, tell me the bad news." I said, "Bud, you whipped it straight inside all day, and you hit it off the toe, and you pretty much toe shanked it to the right." He goes, "Okay." He goes, "Well, give me the good news." I said, "Well, the good news is we know how to fix it. We just got to keep doing it." And so that's where, credit to him, he doesn't try to rebuild. He knows what we're doing is correct. He knows the fixes. He knows the feels. It's just going to take more reps, and it's also going to take confidence. It's also going to take putts like he made at 17 and 18 at Southern Hills, putts that he made in the match play to beat Victor Hovland and Kevin Na. Things like that, that's what's going to truly fix his stroke, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence is going to lead to better flow away from the ball, not going inside, all those things. That's the other word we always use in his stroke, is flow. When his eyes go to the target, then they get settled back on the ball. I almost want the putter going back before his eyes even get settled.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of old Dr. Rotella stuff as well.
Yep.
Because the moment he gets settled and stagnant is when there's that inside kind of jerky looking move. So, what's amazing though, even with that stroke that doesn't look pretty, he makes a lot of them. He makes a lot of them, and his stroke is beautiful outside of 5 feet. And he made a great comment at Augusta this year, and they asked him about his, because obviously the media is all over him about his putting, and he said, "Look," he goes, "I'm never going to win any beauty contest inside of 5 feet, but if anybody wants to go to the putting green right now, we can go." So he believes in what he's doing. He knows he's on the right track. And what's crazy about this stupid game is, so last week Colonial, he was tired as can be, exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even sure if he was going to play, really worn out. Probably his best his stroke has ever looked inside of 5 feet to me. Mm-hmm. I didn't see any of the ones that kind of go inside, and yet he was -3.5 strokes game putting. He missed the cut because he hit it.
Yeah, right.
And to me, that's progress, because the confidence taken from Southern Hills allowed him to free up his stroke a little bit more and more belief. And as he texted me late Sunday night after he lost in the playoff, he goes, "Coach, you've been telling me this for a long time, but I now finally believe I'm one of the best in the world." When you start saying those things, good things are going to happen.
Absolutely. Well, especially with that attitude, right? I mean, you're poised for success, and we know he's one of the best ball strikers in the world. So it's going to happen. So all of that, just because you look at this and you're right. I mean, it's absolutely perfect. And my audience watching this, they're saying, "Oh, look at this. There's another 2-to-1 ratio. He's longer back, shorter through." Does that little lower finish help him kind of feel a little more up down with the stroke too?
1,000%. So a lot of times you'll see me out of the green holding his left shoulder or holding the back of his left tricep, because in putting, I believe the right shoulder controls the backstroke and the left shoulder controls the through stroke. That is the arc of the stroke. It's not done with your hands. So we're constantly trying to keep connection in that left arm, where that feels like his tricep is on his rib cage. The left shoulder stays down, which therefore that keeps the putter lower to the ground, but also keeps the toe releasing. So when his left shoulder comes up, left elbow kind of disengages from his side, that's when the toe stays open. He gets those little wipers to the right.
I can't tell you how many times I've given that lesson to people.
I just, look, I'm not a technology geek. I'm a geek in trying to figure out how to make guys better and keeping things simple. But, we went through that fad in teaching for a long time of trying to hit up on putts. Well, the putter has 3 to 4 degrees of loft on it for a reason. Why are we trying to hit up on it? Because unfortunately, when you hit up on it, that left shoulder comes up, the left elbow gets going out, and you can't control the putter face.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think it's we do a lot of training with kind of a glove under the left arm, a lot of left arm only drills to where the left shoulder is kind of working. He calls it working around the corner. When he gets in a really good setup position, he feels like he can just rock back and forth. He feels like he can get around the corner. One little interesting find, if you look at this, you can kind of zoom in on his grip. We find that when he putts the best, the bottom of his right hand, his 2 fingers are always covering the E on the super stroke. When he gets the hands a little bit too high on the putter, that's when he can't control the face and it starts creeping inside. So he honestly picked that up on himself. Wednesday night at Southern Hills, he sent me a text and goes, "Look at these pictures." And his hand was maybe half an inch higher than it normally was. And, these guys are so good that one little bit of tip, one little bit of help, one little thing of feel can just shift the confidence. And he made 2 putts early on the first 2 holes there and looked at his caddy, Ryan, and said, "I'm back. I got this."
Wow. So things are going to continue to smooth out in the backstroke, because with him, it sounds like, you get the setup maintenance right. If that putter head gets started correctly, watch out. And the inside the 4 feet stuff that we see from time to time, it's a lot of it just anxiety driven that you
100%.
guys are just kind of working through.
Well, it's anxiety driven. It's obviously a technical flaw leads to a little bit of a mental breakdown. That's period. You don't just all of a sudden not have trust for him. You have a flaw that creeps in there. So we're constantly trying to fix the flaw, get the flaw better. And it is so much better than 3 years ago when I saw him, when there was, kind of shaking. His hands would shake a little bit on the putter. He was really unconfident, nervous. And now it's getting to a point where, look, it's not where we want it, but it's at least we're closing the gap. We're closing the gap. Outside of 5 feet, you don't really see it. And we're just trying to, but he at least knows it now. Like he will feel it when it goes straight inside, which is great. That is huge for him, because as much as I can tell him to do it, if he doesn't feel it on his own, we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah. It's
and
good stuff, man.
Let's face it, the guy's one of the best ball strikers in the world. As I've said, if he is strokes gained level for the year, slightly in the positive, he's a top 5 player in the world.
Oh,
we get him to be just a little bit better than average, and I think he can contend for being, the best in the world. So when you hit it as well as he does, we don't have to putt elite.
Yeah.
The weeks he putts elite, he's going to win. The week he putts above average, he's going to have a chance to win. So that's the cool part about this, is we just keep preaching it from a standpoint of, hey, imagine how good this is going to be when it gets just a little bit better.
Yeah. It's amazing. And his good buddy Cam Young now is out there with them and playing well from Wake. And
that kid's
it's amazing. I was just thinking, you have Burns and Scheffler in the playoff, and I've been touting Burns for a long time on the podcast. And you think Burns and Scheffler and Will and Cam Young, none of these guys are even on the Ryder Cup team.
No, we're going to need 2, right? We're going to need a JV team for the Ryder Cup. I mean, there's going to be, you could literally have a team under 30 years of age.
Gosh, American golf, men's golf, it is so stacked right now. Unbelievable.
It's going to be tough for those Europeans for a while, I think.
Yeah. But hey, this was awesome. We could talk forever, but I know you have to go to work. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast, getting up early at Muirfield with me. And the best of luck to you. I'll be the first to text you, and I still have Will Sell, so I'm going to text him when he wins, because I know when he wins once, he's going to win like a dozen times. He's going to be that good.
The floodgates are open. I hope it'll have a little bit of Scotty Scheffler feel to it once he wins.
Oh, it's going to.
It's just going to happen, and that's what's cool. It's what I told him after Torrey Pines when he didn't putt great on Saturday there, and he hit a pretty darn good putt on 18, and when he missed that putt's supposed to go to the right, and it didn't. Mm-hmm. And I said, what? Next time you're in the position, you're going to make that putt, and he did at Southern Hills, and that's that's huge. Those 2 putts, I call them memory bankers. He'll be able to draw on those forever.
All right, Josh Gregory, unbelievable podcast.
Buddy.
Best of luck this week.
I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Anytime.
Okay, man. Yep.
Thank you. Bye.